In late October 2019, longtime industry veteran and E&R editor-in-chief Jan Tuckman sat down with Keith Bentley, co-founder of Bentley Systems, and his brother, Greg Bentley, CEO, to talk about the genesis of their now 35-year-old family-run global enterprise, the follow-through over the years, and their vision going forward.
That big technology show at EC Systems,
Yes.
remember
Oh,
that?
yeah. George Borkovich.
And I was sitting across the table from you. I think there was an escalator, or down at the bottom of an escalator, and we were sitting there talking about Bentley Systems and a new company.
And I was probably saying, he's E&R, wow,
Yeah.
big time, yeah.
Yeah. So, did you at that time, did you see this coming? Could you have conceived of, 35 years in the future, a little
No, not to the magnitude that it's turned out to be. We certainly thought, great things might happen, but no, I certainly wouldn't say we had a master plan that had us reaching milestones into the 2000s. No.
And when did you arrive on the scene?
In my
Right.
case, 1990, I think it was.
Oh.
But AEC Systems was in its prime then, and I sort of think that maybe things were imagined then that have come about since then, and digital twins is a pretty good way to encapsulate what could have been imagined and is now in our grasp.
Yeah. So how about the systems? You thought of naming the company Bentley Systems. Where did that?
I think Bentley software was taken, and Bentley computer was.
Bentley Motors was taken.
Yeah, right. Actually, the term systems, I think, wasn't that we had a big grand design. The thought, but I do think it turned out to be an appropriate term.
That's the thing. It's
sort
like
of accidentally.
Sort of very prescient almost. That
Well, you know what? Actually, now I think back on it, Greg started a company called Devon Systems. You know what? I think Devon Systems predated Bentley Systems. Maybe it was just plagiarism. I don't know. I don't remember.
Copying is the form of flattery, the sincerest form of flattery.
If you had copied a Bentley part, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The lack of creativity even then was.
I don't think that's been too much of a problem. No. But I was also wondering if there was something growing up. Was there something that inspired, first of all, a family company where a family could come together and form a business, and also just to be thinking, was there some influences about technology or about doing great things, or what were those influences?
Well, my father was an engineer, and I think that was the inspiration for my career path to start with engineering. And likewise, Barry and Raymond are both engineers. Greg, I guess, would call himself a financial engineer. So yeah, I think maybe that had a influence. My dad had an influence on our wanting to get into something, engineering related. I remember when I was young, I thought I wanted to be a dentist. Why did I want to be a dentist? Because they're entrepreneurs and they work for themselves. And I thought that was a great way. Turns out, if you're going to be a dentist, you have to put your hands in other people's mouths. And I hadn't thought it all the way through. So when I was in school, I kind of decided I would prefer to be an engineer. And
I don't know that there was a grand design, though, to involve all the brothers or many brothers necessarily, except Barry needed help, he reached out to you. You needed help, you reached out to Barry, and I think there was Ray and Scott and so forth. Each were sort of within reach of, this is worth working on, come join up.
Yeah, so the beginning of Bentley Systems really was Barry had started another company. He and his roommates in college had started another company, and I moved from Delaware to California to work for Barry. So that wasn't a family company necessarily, but then we started Bentley Systems, and then I hired Barry away from them, and then we hired, I think, Ray, then Scott, or maybe the other way around. And Greg had started his own company, was working, and then I suppose what happened, Greg sold his company and needed needed something to do, came to work for Bentley Systems. So yeah, there wasn't even a plan for the
It
family
happened
part.
kind of
Yeah.
a bit
Well,
at
it
a
helped to
time.
have, I guess, enough work. You know,
That's true.
that was
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Somewhat, the only piece of business advice I ever got, someone told me, make sure you always hire people smarter than you. And I thought, wow, okay, that's easy. I'll hire my brothers. And so that's what happened.
Because you knew they were smart.
Absolutely,
You knew
yeah.
they were smart. Right.
Not even close. So.
That to bring things to the modern, to today, literally today, we couldn't be more global. There isn't anywhere else yet to go, I don't think. But you saw in the keynote this morning our users from this region in Asia speaking, including the interview in Mandarin, and the project shown in China is truly exemplary. It literally is the case that whatever we develop is applied first and fastest in China now, and China is just able to bring to bear more new young engineers than anywhere else in the world, and a great combination of software engineers and infrastructure engineers. We were visited by one of the design institutes in China with whom we work very closely. They're one of the ones who were in industrial hydropower and were assigned by the government to have responsibility for smart cities, for digital, for BIM in major cities. That one alone is hiring 300 starting engineers this year, all with master's degree. And next year will be 450, all new with. So we have that kind of firepower in the world for these digital natives to be applying themselves to the type of. You see the sort of solution you've seen here. So China, this is just an example of the globalism, but when you've reached that far, China already is our second largest territory in the world in new business, and our third largest territory in total revenue.
So is the U.S. still your first?
Yes. And the UK is still ahead in revenue, but China believes they'll surpass anywhere else in the world but the U.S. before long.
Yeah.
And of course, that leaves us, worried about trade issues and so forth. But
We wondered about that.
Infrastructure, sort of something in the world where there are not necessarily enough resources in any one country. We need trade to balance supply and demand of infrastructure engineering talent.
It's such a global economy. I also wondered whether you had any predictions about trends for international infrastructure development.
So my prediction is that more and more of it will be privately financed. And you could say, well, that's a necessity in the United States because we haven't been able to allocate public funds for new infrastructure. But there's more than sufficient private funds in the world to invest in infrastructure in the world, not even country by country. So these huge funds that have been amassed that are going to be like merchant infrastructure investors comparing projects across the world as to their potential return. And the good thing about that for those of us in technologies like digital twins is the private infrastructure investors are not going to settle for anything less than project and asset digital twins when they know they can have that.
And is there a more technology side prediction you have for global infrastructure?
Well, the technology revolution that's happened in cloud computing and just infinite resources for bandwidth and storage have redefined sort of the way things can work, software can work, and so just starting over again, I think, and a lot of rethinking old problems in new ways has exposed this new concept of a digital twin. Maybe it's not a new concept, but the implementation of a digital twin through cloud computing will continue to change our business, the infrastructure software business, but I think even more so the infrastructure business at large, because all those inefficiencies that have been ingrained in our work process now can begin to be addressed. Not that they automatically will, but the technology to allow for a better infrastructure workflow, it makes me think that, hey, it's a great time to be a software in infrastructure.
And come to think of it,
That's
Jan.
a lead into, I was going to say, that's a lead into digital construction works.
There you go.
You were
Well,
saying the process.
Well, let's come back to that, but the other sort of commercial model to say what firms do in infrastructure project delivery may change, but what will come about when we say everything as a service, so servitization, so that instead of buying at a water treatment plant, you're buying clean water. Mm-hmm. Instead of buying generation facilities, you're buying energy. So that is, the extreme, the ultimate of the gig economy, if you like. Mm-hmm. Asset light. We just want throughput servitization. And back to my notion that capital will flow to produce that, and then the means and methods will not be so much will not necessarily continue what's been the norm up until now. And you can imagine a digital twin applying to a infrastructure as a service in new ways. I suppose I'm influenced by our guest keynoter this morning, Ayesha Khanna here in Singapore, who talked about how AI is applied to problems, looking at it from an outcome standpoint. What result do you want to produce? And that lies ahead, I think, to change the business models and the opportunities. What we know we can't change is the way engineers do their job. They can't start over again with a different approach and mindset. But when Keith refers to infinite computing and bandwidth and so forth, it should be applied to be smart enough so that people don't have to start over and they can advance, adding, for instance, the time dimension, so that the work of engineering now is able to be change synchronized over time to keep up with asset life cycles. That's a good challenge that can be solved. At Bentley Systems, we decided to focus after 2008 on our R&D and investments on the asset life cycle, not just the project life cycle, to where we're number one in reliability software in the world now, the one aspect of that gets measured. The problem I'm going to get to is, however, the intelligence in the design, which could be the digital DNA for operations and maintenance, is going to get lost in construction if the construction doesn't start from the design digital twin, if you like. If it starts from scratch, because all construction uses a 3D model now, and literally if it's from scratch, then the engineer's intelligence can never surmount that and get to the operations life cycle. So that's why construction and 4D modeling is such a priority for us. If you don't solve that, the digital twin potential will be much harder to realize. So construction fundamentally is 4D, and is the reason that we want to work on the 4D fundaments of construction, the space and time occupancy and the logistics and so forth, rather than working on merely optimizing and digitizing the 2D workflows that tend to exist in construction. So you earlier asked about digital construction works. That's an answer to what's it going to take to change the construction work processes. And the answer is it's going to take reinvention of some work processes which say, from first principles, if you know the job is going to be done with a construction digital twin, part of a project digital twin, how would you do the job differently? And that's a matter of workflow invention to be done by people who are comfortable under hard hats, who know and love construction, who understand software and hardware technologies, but whose zeal is not to create them but to apply them. And those are the great and scarce individuals that we in TopCon have dedicated to digital construction works, so that they can join up as part of projects.
Last year you were talking a lot, Keith, about open source and how important it is to to have open source technology involved, and here in I feel it's what I'm hearing from digital construction works also. It's not. It's gonna be agnostic to, again, open to other.
Open and independent.
Yeah, open.
There'll be other technologies than ours or TopCon's that are part of solving this.
Mm-hmm.
And we hope there'll be an ecosystem that we'll all learn from and will help us understand where there are gaps in what we do, but we can't do all of it when we're talking about something as big as important and as important as making construction automated and robotic and connecting those workflows together.
Yeah, so when we talk to people about digital twins, and I have never spoken to any user of our current software or even of our competitor software who hasn't agreed a digital twin would be a better outcome of their current work process. But each time I talk to someone, their idea of what their digital twin would look like is slightly different. So it's obvious that there isn't going to be one vendor supplying the digital twin software. There will instead be many components that get plugged together in different ways for different industries and different user types. So the idea that, okay, what we really need is a platform upon which we can apply the knowledge about how the digital twin should be used, and it's going to be different every time. So openness is, I think, of the essence. Another aspect of openness that I think really is important when we're at this nascent stage of digital twins is, look, you want to keep open your flexibility, because who knows what a digital twin will be 5 years from now. The one that's going to win is going to be the one that can be the most nimble, and I think what we've learned from our experience using open source projects is they tend to be pretty flexible. So anyway, that's part of a motivation of saying, look, we don't have all the answers. We're not going to be able to supply all the pieces that everyone will ever want.
I would invite you maybe to say a word about next year in.
How about North America for your
how about
infrastructure?
that? Yeah.
There was general applause when we announced this morning. It was the first time announced that we'll be in Vancouver for Year in Infrastructure 2020. And
We're looking forward to that. Yes.
Me too.
Yeah.